Hi, I'm Gabe from the Royal, and I am going to be sharing some thoughts with you about Advent. Today is the first Sunday in Advent, and we're going to be sharing more thoughts on Advent as the season progresses through December. But I just wanted to share with you today my kind of thoughts as I've been mulling over what it means to me. And I think the first thing we have to get a hold of in Advent is that the birth of Christ really isn't the birth of Advent. The birth of Advent is actually the birth of creation itself. You see, God has this story of his redemption through Christ. But within that story, there are hundreds of other stories. What has happened is that God has made a mosaic of stories from Noah to Abraham to Moses to David to Esther to Rahab to all of these characters in the Old Testament that were used by God to bring about the birth of Christ. And so, in that sense, God has been working and was working all throughout history to bring the advent of the incarnation of Jesus. And that actually includes all of, you could say, heathen history as well. The kingdoms of the world that God used the Israelites to influence and to work within were also a part of the story. So that you begin with these massive civilizations that are inexplicably created, like Egypt and like Babylon, and they go and progress into Persia and Greece and Rome, to the point where when Jesus is born, you have this civilization that is basically at its apex. And you have Jesus coming into this world that is so developed and civilized, but he didn't come to destroy it. Jesus did not come to destroy man. He came to fulfill man. He came to reveal to man the truth about himself. And that is not that man's nature is wrong and evil and should be destroyed. It's that man will always go wrong and will always do evil unless man is fulfilled by Christ. And so this is the Advent story. It's a mosaic of stories. But really, it's an approach of God to man. You see, God always initiates to man. And that approach of God to man is very similar to the Good Samaritan story, where the Good Samaritan approaches this person who's been wounded, who's been hurt, who's been beat up and left for dead, and approaches him in a way that is so full of mercy, so full of grace, that Jesus comes to us in our depravity. Romans chapter 5 says, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Ephesians chapter 2 verse 1 says that while we were dead in trespasses, Christ comes to us and he heals us, just like the Good Samaritan healed that man, took him to a hospital, took care of him. And so really the idea in God's approach to us is that the grace of God, his grace, is something that is totally and completely prevenient. It is something that it's there in the distance before we can even see it coming toward us. And that's the idea of Advent, that God is initiating everything in our lives, everything good in our lives, and for our good. And we just trust in his goodness. And it's that idea that before Abraham was, grace is. And that idea of grace is so powerful, and it's truly at the heart of Advent. I hope that blesses you. Have a peaceful and wonderful Advent.
Come on.